health psychology student from Bath, and she's doing a placement here with us over the summer. And today she's going to be telling us about her dissertation.
Oh, thank you, Jen.
No worries.
Move down.
You might need to click the screen.
Yeah, I was going to say I have to click the arrow instead, but can you see the next screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, that's fine. Yeah, so as Jen said, I'm here on placement for 4 months as part of my master's in health psychology. And I did my undergrad at Plymouth in psychology. And I knew from that straight away that I wanted to pursue health psychology, as I just knew that was the most interesting to me. And I'm open to also clinical and health in the future. So my research project, which you might have heard a bit about, is looking at mindful drinking. So my specific dissertation title is exploring the predictors of future engagement in mindful drinking in alcohol drinkers. And this is part of a wider project, which is just basically exploring mindful drinking and if there could be any potential good uses for it and what it is really. So the rationale behind this is, obviously the alcohol consumption is a leading issue nationally in the creation of health burdens, and that although people seem to very well understand that binge drinking and drinking a lot is bad for you, it's less well known that just moderate or even small levels of alcohol consumption can also increase your disease risk. So this has shown a need for more effective campaigns which better educate people on the impacts of alcohol, as well as offering them strategies as well, because it's all good to say that there's bad effects of alcohol, but also, what are you going to do to help me then? So one of the main things which we were looking at, and I was looking at during my lit review, was the responsible drinking campaign. And I was sort of noticed that there's like very mixed effectiveness, and there's quite a lot of confusion. So people don't really seem to know if the campaign is actually relevant to them. So, am I being responsible? Am I being a responsible drinker? People don't know like what it is. So some people, it was argued that it was a certain level of alcohol. So it was drinking like below government recommended amounts. Some people said it was avoiding like negative effects such as passing out and having blackouts. And one theory I also looked at was the psychological reactance theory, which is when people react in a way which is kind of opposite to what they're being told to do. So quite often when people say drink responsibly, they sort of think, no, I'm not going to, and kind of can do the opposite. They can actually increase the alcohol consumption. So just making sure that the future interventions and campaigns make sure that people's personal autonomy and their freedom of choice is not threatened. So you're just encouraging it, but you're not forcing it. So yeah, as I said, this highlights a new need for a better approach, which is simple, people know exactly what it is, and it's more relatable to a wider audience. Because typically with responsible drinking campaigns, most people think they're already being responsible. Mindful drinking was a term which was suggested to encourage people to be more aware of their alcohol use and consider the harms and reduction if it's appropriate. And I'm sure most of you have heard of the term mindful eating. So this involves individuals paying more attention to the taste and texture of their food and sort of slowing down, enjoying their meal more. And the benefits have been like reducing overeating, reducing binge disorder and things like that. I'm sure everyone's seen the video where they say to take a spoonful of food, put it in your mouth, and then put your hands up like this, and it's supposed to make you slow down. And I've tried it, and it's actually okay. I did enjoy my food more. Yeah, but it's unclear at the moment if a similar idea of mindful drinking would be understood or effective for reducing overconsumption of alcohol. And obviously, one particular issue could be that alcohol is a mind-altering substance, and it can affect your attention. And obviously, to be mindful, you need to be in the present moment. So yeah, that's the kind of what we want to work out. So the study objectives was to investigate if alcohol drinkers are familiar with the term mindful drinking. So if they're aware of it, if they've heard of it, what their interpretation of the term is, what they think it is, and if they currently engage in mindful drinking, and then also if they don't currently engage in mindful drinking, what are the barriers and facilitators to future engagement? And for this study, the design used, we have an online cross-sectional survey, which we use Qualtrics to make and to distribute, which is currently being distributed at the moment. And we've gathered a mix of quant and qual data. We've got some tick box responses, some like rating scales, and then some just open text box responses. And we're also gathering data on participants' demographics and information on their drinking habits, particularly how much they consume, sort of their average consumption. And the survey takes 10 to 15 minutes to complete. So the participants are currently being recruited. We've used a lot of different avenues to sort of try and gather as many participants as possible, really. So social media, emails, on TARG's website, and through word of mouth. And participants also have the opportunity to enter a prize draw, which has definitely been very enticing, particularly for the people that I've been approaching. The inclusion criteria is quite broad because we just wanted to include anyone really who could legally drink. So participants just have to be 18, drink alcoholic beverages. This can be of a varying amount, live in the UK, and have English as a first language. So I'm just going to run through the survey and sort of, it's broken into 5 sections and what each section covers. So the first section is familiarity. So we want to know if participants have heard of the term mindful drinking, and if they have, where have they heard it? And we have some tick box responses, which they can tick as many that all reply, such as books, newspaper, social media, from family and friends. Then the next section is on their interpretation of the term mindful drinking. So what they believe the term means. What do they think someone who's engaged in mindful drinking may behave like? Who they think mindful drinking campaign would be aimed at. And here we've provided a few examples, and then also open text box. We did different ages, students, working population, those who overly consume alcohol, and old adults. And if they think there's a difference between the terms mindful drinking and responsible drinking, and if they do, what do they think the difference is? So the next section looks at engagement. So they are firstly presented with a statement about what we believe mindful drinking is, just a few sentences. Participants are asked if they currently engage in mindful drinking, if they do, how often and in what situations. And if they don't currently engage in mindful drinking, then we ask them if they'd be open to engaging in mindful drinking in the future, in a scale. And then follow-up questions are also used in this section to identify what the barriers and what would also encourage them to engage in mindful drinking in the future. Then the next section is on perceived effectiveness. So we ask them to rate how effective they think mindful drinking could be to reduce population drink levels, their own drinking, and individual level of alcohol consumption. And they asked if they believe mindful drinking to be a more effective message than responsible drinking, and if they think it promotes healthier alcohol consumption. So before they're asked if they thought there's a difference, now they're asked which one they basically think sounds better, which ones they think would promote healthier drinking. And those that say yes will also be asked to explain why they think that. Then the last section is on demographics. So this is age, gender, level of education, yearly income, and ethnicity. And then we also ask about their drinking behaviours and what they think of their current drinking. So we ask about what their current drinking patterns are, and then we're going to calculate weekly or monthly units, and the monthly units are going to turn into weekly as well, so they can be compared easier. Why they drink alcohol, and then we put some few different reasons, which are the most commonly noted, like conformity, enjoyment, to reduce negative effects, to what extent they're concerned about how much they drink, and if they think drinking negatively affects their physical and or mental health, and if they are motivated to reduce their alcohol consumption. So that's the survey. So going back to my dissertation, the research questions I'm mostly looking at are what predicts future engagement in mindful drinking. And then I'm going to link this to a few of the questions asked. So is there physical health concern related to alcohol consumption? Is there physical health concern related to the alcohol consumption related to future engagement in mindful drinking, their motivation to decrease alcohol consumption, and their current alcohol consumption. We're also going to do interacting with the above variables as well. So data is currently being collected, but this is my plan for analysis, which hopefully should happen next week. So in terms of inferential analysis, so the main outcome is openness to engagement in mindful drinking in the future. So obviously I've asked the question, do you currently engage in mindful drinking? So this would just be the people that say no. And then the 3 predictors I just said were physical health concern, motivation to decrease alcohol, and their weekly alcohol consumption. And we're going to use linear regressions to explore the direction and magnitude of the relationships, and then also the moderating influences on 2 of the variables on weekly alcohol consumption and openness to engagement in mindful drinking. So yeah, it's quite a lot of that all sort of linking together. And we're going to do adjusted and unadjusted models for the demographics. Then in terms of descriptives, the participants' characteristics, we want to stratify by drinking heaviness based on the government recommended amounts of weekly alcohol consumption. And I just think this would be quite a nice way to present it, and quite interesting as well to work out, you know, the percentage and just be able to report how many people are actually drinking above and below government recommended amounts. And I am gathering some qual data as well, so if it's appropriate, I'm going to use some of that to explain quant findings. So what next? So current data is currently being collected today. From when I just checked about an hour ago, we had 171 participants, so might be up a couple more now. Then data analysis, I think that will be in the next sort of 2-3 weeks, that will be finished up. And then as my dissertation, I need to write up my results and discussion. If anyone wants to read it, then they're more than welcome. And future directions will sort of, I need to know what the findings show first to see if mindful drinking is something that needs to be researched more, and what findings are showing and if it could be beneficial. And then data will be made available. But as I mentioned, this is part of a wider study, so I'm just taking my own data. So hopefully there's more done with the survey though, because there's so much data coming out of it. So yeah, I just wonder if anyone had any questions. And also I do have the study link here, which I'll leave up at the end, which if you could share with your family and friends would be amazing. So yeah, thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Liv. That was really clear.
Thank you. See everyone now.
Does anyone have any comments or questions for Liv? You might want to take the screen down, Liv, so we can see everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Hazel?
Hey, super basic, but I was wondering if you knew what adults were kind of drinking at the moment, like what proportion of people were above and below 14 units currently. Have you got an idea about that?
I actually haven't really looked at that yet. I was kind of, my literature review was more looking at like the interventions and campaigns that are currently being done. And my only sort of background on like the harms, I wasn't looking at like specific numbers. I was looking at more like the harms and people's knowledge of them. So I don't actually know that yet, but I am intrigued to see out of my sample how many people are above recommended.
Fresh data coming through. That's great. Yeah, awesome.
Okay, I'll send it over to you.
Yeah.
Amy.
Actually me that has.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, if you're in the same room, so cool, yeah. So if alcohol consumption is your outcome, I'm sure that mindful drinking doesn't just relate to how much you consume, but how you consume it as well. So if you had, you know, if you were consuming below the unit amount, but all on one day, that's obviously different to consuming on different days. So it's just a kind of a comment, like future research, but I wondered if any of that was measured, or if it's trying to measure it in any other future studies.
Yeah, so one question does ask how often they drink. So I guess that we could kind of link into it. So I think there's like once a day to once every 2 to 3 months. So I guess that would be kind of linking to that a bit. But yeah, that's a good point actually. Yeah, definitely.
yes, because I think like the patterns of use are just as important as the outcomes of using it, I think. But I don't know.
Yeah, as it's very like exploratory at the moment though, so there is just a lot of questions, and obviously relating to kind of binge drinking and in summer when there's a certain events and stuff, I think that's definitely something that could be looked at.
Yeah, well, I think it was really interesting. And I think
Thank you.
Thanks. Jazz?
Hi, I've got some really badly formed questions. Thank you. It was really interesting. I think the first thing I was wondering about was, because your outcome isn't like actual behavior, it's technically like planned or perceived future behavior, right? So have you thought about any theories that you're going to bring in your dissertation for that to kind of explain that as a limitation or as a strength, either way that you want to frame it? And then my second question was more, it's quite a stupid question, really. Can you mindfully drink dangerously?
Okay, right.
By definition.
Okay, first one. So at the moment, I still need to have a look at more theories, because the ones I've settled on, I keep seeing other stuff. So at the moment, I have got a little bit on planned behaviour and a bit on the personal level reactance theory. So yeah, I guess the thing is, it's hard because I've not got the data yet, so I don't know what I'm going to use. But yeah, but I definitely do think you could mindfully drink badly as well. Like that is something I have thought of, but it's so exploratory that someone might comment on that as well. So obviously someone's having a bad day, they might think like, you know, they might go out of their way to get hammered. You don't know yet, do you? So it is really interesting, yeah, and hopefully there's other studies that can look at that. But yeah, in terms of the theory, I still think there's so many theories that could relate to it. I've kind of stuck with those two for now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jazz. And
Jazz named my question. I was going to say the same thing about, well, it's actually thinking about the difference between responsible and mindful, and I think for me that is one of it. In principle, you can be mindful of what you're drinking and say, screw it, I'm still going to drink lots, and that's both a blessing and a curse. The blessing being it gives you license to behave in any way and it's not so top down. So that was the sort of thinking I had that Jazz said. So I'm going to ask something slightly different, which is about the concept of mindful. And I don't know the answers to this, so whatever you think would be interesting. I struggle with this link to mindfulness. Now, when we're talking about food and mindful eating, there is a clear link to mindfulness. It talks about in the moment. For alcohol, I'm not sure if that's right, because for me, it's more about, using a different word, just being cognizant that 14 units is where you should be thinking about. So it's less in the moment taste, because you're pissed half the time, right? You know, so it feels like the mindfulness link might be weaker and perhaps misleading if we think being mindful is a more of a protracted calculation. I just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think more for the mindful drinking, I was more sort of wanted to use the term aware of drinking. So I think, yeah, obviously being mindful is a bit different, but if you're aware, obviously that is harder to do when you're in the moment. Yeah, but I think the term aware may be slightly different. So that's kind of the one I was more leaning towards in terms of drinking. Wait, you're on.
Sorry, I think it's also about how many you drink over time. So in any one session, you might only drink 2 units, which doesn't sound a lot. But then if you drink 25 of those 2 unit sessions, you're then at 50, you know. So I struggle with whether this should be linked to mindfulness and if that's a potential flaw in this as a term.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I found a few studies which did link mindfulness to lower levels of alcohol, but that wasn't mindful drinking. But that was one study I did find. I thought that was quite interesting. But it was only one study I found on it, because I wanted to have a look as well, the same as you. So yeah, I think that is definitely an area that seems to be missed out a bit as well, but obviously it is different to what we're doing.
Chris?
Yeah, really interesting talk. Thank you. I might just have misunderstood this, but I think one of the things you said was that you're asking participants if they think mindful drinking is a better description than responsible drinking, and if they do, what are the reasons for it? And I'm just wondering if they think it's a worse description than responsible drinking, are you also trying to gather their reasons for that as well?
Yeah, so the first one, which is when they're asked if they think there's a difference between them, if they say yes, then there's a text box. Trying to think of the second one. Jen, can you remember if the second one has a text box after?
No, I can't remember off the top of my head, but no, I don't think it's closed. I think they can answer either way. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that it is still an open text box, and there is a comment section at the end where they can add in any comments about the topic, so they can write in there as well.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Does anyone else have any other questions? I don't think I've missed any hands. No. Great. Oh, Gareth has said, do you anticipate that the effect of mindful drinking would interact with the strength of the alcohol?
I mean, yeah, in one of the questions we have put about the strength of alcohol as well, but we weren't going to do anything like just on the strength. We were just going to do that to work out alcohol consumption.
Thanks,
I think
Gareth.
it's a good question. It brings back to what mindful drinking is, isn't it? Is being mindful just taking the time to find out what a unit is and what the recommended guidelines are and what it means if you're over them, and then, you know, globally thinking about your over, which is where I think mindfulness falls away for me. Or if it's more about mindfulness, then it speaks, I think, more to what Gareth's saying is, you know, so yeah, the backstory to this is that this is being used in campaigns, and we were like, what is it, and what? So that's the backstory to this. But I personally haven't found the origin of it, because it'd be nice to know whoever sort of started what the kind of rationale was for it as a term, and whether it came out of the mindfulness stuff or not. And I haven't found an answer to that, but that's
when I did some reading early on in this, and a couple of months ago, it did seem like it stemmed from like the mindfulness kind of thing, which I do kind of get, but the two messages aren't the same, because obviously mindfulness is about being present in your choices at that moment in time. And like when I'm drinking, I'm very like thinking of the present. Like I'm not thinking of like all the worries in the future and that kind of thing. So in that aspect, you are being quite present at that moment, but you're not necessarily being present with your choices with an alcohol.
If I'm 4 or 5 vodkas in, I think it's an absolute great idea to have 4 more. That's what I struggle with.
Yeah.
That's just me, but I'm being very mindful, and I think, well, let's keep going with this.
And then you find yourself having a pina colada at 11 a.m. and on a work day.
Hazel, do you have something?
I was just thinking, like you're not looking at meditation or any kind of practices that people have, or any kind of like linking to like actual actively cultivating mindfulness. And then I was thinking, actually, in that sense, drinking and mindfulness is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? Because mindfulness is about the prefrontal cortex being recruited, you know, more intensely, and alcohol is about turning that bit off. So yeah, like actually it kind of doesn't work if you start extending the metaphor a bit.
Yeah, that is the thing at the moment, just because it is so exploratory. There's so many questions, and obviously, as Andrew said, we're trying to work out sort of the difference between mindfulness and mindful drinking, that I didn't even really think. I was like, they're different things, you know, but obviously, do they link together? We don't know yet. Anyone else?
Gareth, are you asking a question? Could you develop a measure of time spent being mindful per unit consumed? We'll think about that one.
Yeah, I feel like if it's in like a lab scenario, though, everyone is going to be being a bit more mindful, aren't they? That's going to be very difficult to do in a real world setting. But yeah, that would be cool.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for those really interesting questions. I think, Liv, you said you're happy for people to get in touch with you if they want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, of course.
Peter, do we have anything else to discuss? I think we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, so.
Not particularly, other than if you come here next Friday, you'll be very disappointed because there aren't any more of these until the first Friday in September. I think that's the 2nd. I have sent calendar invites. If you haven't received a calendar invite yet for next year's lab invites, do send me or TARG admin a quick email and I'll forward that on to you. Apart from that, I hope everyone has a really nice August and has some meeting free. Enjoy that time off.
Thank you.
And while we're wrapping up, can I just take this opportunity to thank Peter for doing a fabulous job of taking over, and Will for helping it all seamlessly move over to Peter. You guys keep us ticking along and you're fantastic. So just thank you both so much.
Could I just say as well, I think this might be the last time that I speak to some of you. So yeah, it's a pleasure being part of TARG and really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. I just realised that you guys are all, well, because of the nature of the August. So you're not going anywhere just yet, hopefully, but this will probably be the last lab meeting.
No, I've got 3 more weeks, but yeah, the last lab meeting.
Yeah, so it'll probably be the last time we'll all be on a call. So hopefully see you all and speak to you all soon and in other ways. But yeah, Liv, Jenny, Billy, it's been a pleasure having you with us. And thank you so much for your help at the PE event as well. I was really, really touched by how many of you turned out and worked on that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Great, thanks everyone. Thanks again, Liv.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks.